Happy Friday, guys, and welcome in here to WagerTalk TV for another episode of Puck Time. It is June 2nd, and the Stanley Cup finals start tomorrow, and we cannot wait to break them down. The Florida Panthers and the Vegas Golden Knights. Yes, that's right. I said the Florida Panthers in the Stanley Cup finals, the 8 seed, taking on the Las Vegas Golden Knights. They were the number 1 seed in their division. To end off the season, they find themselves here in the Cup finals. They've been to several Western Conference finals. This is their second Stanley Cup finals since the franchise has existed. I've been known to take some jabs about the way that the GM has worked his magic for the Golden Knights, but I can't really say anything now with how he finds himself back in this position. We've got props. We've got series props. We've got totals, sides, lots to go over here for the series, for the game. Of course, I'm Andrew. I have Carm with me as usual. Carm, we had a little bit of a wait due to some short series in the conference finals, but here we are finally ready to talk about some Stanley Cup final action.
Yeah, man, I am super excited, Andrew. Toronto's excited because you got guys like Prez who are calling them the Toronto Golden Knights because there's so many Torontonians apparently on that team, but it is Vegas. It's Vegas and Florida, man. I am telling you, I'm excited about it. It took a while. Florida's been off a while, and a lot of people are talking about the whole rust thing. I don't think it's that big a factor, but we'll discuss it. But this is going to be a very good series. The Vegas Golden Knights have, if you try and break down the teams, there are very few flaws in this Vegas Golden Knights team, the way they're playing right now in the playoffs. And if anything, you probably give their forwards an advantage. You probably give their D an advantage because you got two big guys on that D, with Petrangelo's obviously being the big one. The difference could be between the pipes, Aiden Hill versus Sergei Bobrovsky. So we'll see how that goes. But it would have been good if that Vegas series ended sooner because you just want that momentum that Florida has built throughout the last couple of weeks of the season and this playoff run just to continue and not have these days off. But it's game 1 tomorrow night, and I'm looking forward to it. It's great. I'm going to head out with some friends, catch the game somewhere, and I'm super excited. From a betting angle, we're going to try and figure it out, Andrew.
Oh, well, what's so awesome about just the availability of betting props and how things have changed throughout these sports books? There's just so many different options, Carm, for who's going to have the most goals in the series, who will have more saves in the series, more assists. There's so many things to look at. We can look at updated Conn Smythe trophy winners. Obviously, the numbers you're getting now are a heck of a lot different than you'd get even just a couple days ago, last week, a month ago. But before we jump into that, I wanted to just mention the paths that these teams took to get to where they are right now, starting with Vegas taking down the Winnipeg Jets in the first round rather easily. Of course, we saw Winnipeg deal with some injuries, but they got through them. And then that Oilers series where there were some competitive games throughout, but there were also some blowouts, and it seemed that defense was the biggest difference. Vegas was able to contain the Oilers as far as that's concerned, and the most recent series for them, of course, against the Dallas Stars, where they flat out seem to be the deeper team, and that the series clinching win was kind of the icing on the cake. I mean, after Dallas, also want to mention this, I hate to be that guy, but you and I ripped the guy quite a bit. The team was 2-0, the 2-0 with Jamie Benn, and 0-4 without him, sorry, I messed that up. They're 2-0 without him and 0-4 with him in the lineup.
Yeah.
But what did you think about what you saw from the Golden Knights so far in their pathway to the Stanley Cup Finals?
Yeah, and listen, and there's here as I go into this, and I'm going to go into it in a second, but I want to take a step back and just talk about what's going on, with the NBA playoffs, the finals having started last night, and of course the Stanley Cup starts tomorrow. A lot of people are talking about like Miami and the number 8 seeds in Florida and the Miami Heat making it into the finals. While I think the Miami Heat are a true number 8 seed, I don't look at Florida as a number 8 seed, although they are. And I talked to Kelly Stewart about this yesterday. and we were discussing it. I said, listen, this is a Florida team that last year, and I know they had some offseason changes. Last year only lost 16 games. They went something like 58 and 16 and 6, I think it was, or something along those lines. They had 122 points and won the President's Trophy last year. Boston blew past that with 135 whatever points they had this year. But the offseason changes, obviously, Quenneville out, Crawford in, or the Maurice, the coach in. Sorry, Andrew, you're gonna correct me at some point. Paul Maurice in, but you look at and then obviously losing Huberdeau and getting to Chuck. It just took them a while to buy, and a long while to buy into a system that the coach wanted from them, which is you cannot outscore teams. It looked to outscore teams winning games 6-5. It's not sustainable in the playoffs. He eventually got them to buy into this defense, and they bought in a big way. This team played well over the last 2 to 3 weeks of the season, and lucky for them that they weren't out of it before they got into those 2 or 3 weeks, the final weeks of the season. And they've come into these playoffs and they're playing great D. They've had the tougher schedule. And now I'm getting into your question, Andrew, of the road. The road traveled. Vegas, not to discount them, because I just said to you, I think they're playing unbelievable hockey, but they beat the Winnipeg Jets, which in the West were probably the one team that could have easily missed the playoffs there. And then they took on, and then you look at after that, it's the Edmonton Oilers that it's just the Toronto West, you can pretty much call them, make it into the second round, and they just aren't a complete team. And then they knocked off Dallas, which Dallas had their own problems. I'm not saying those teams were all weak, but you look at the Florida Panthers, and they knocked off the President's Trophy winners, the Boston Bruins, in 7 games, coming back from down 3-1. They could have rolled over and played dead. They did not. 3-1, winning twice in Boston. Then they roll the Leafs in 5 games. Keeping them to 2 goals or less in every single game, and then they beat the Metro number 1 seed in the Carolina Hurricanes, who just don't lose games at home, and they did, winning twice there and then clinching it on home ice. This team has been battle tested, so they're not coming in here. And you see the series price. It's Vegas minus 125, minus 130. You're getting plus 105, plus 110 back on Florida. This is an even series other than Vegas having home ice. But home ice they've won 3 series in a row where they didn't have home ice. And they've won it by winning games 1 or games 2. In Boston, they lost game 1. They have won 8 straight, on the road since losing game 1 in Boston. So they can win at home, they can win away. This is going to be a very good series. I can't see it being anything less than 5 games. This is not a series that's over in 4 or 5 games. We're up for a game 6 or a game 7 in this series, Andrew. It's only game 1 tomorrow night, but this is going to be a great series. I hope it doesn't disappoint.
Me too. I'm looking forward to it. And I just want to make that point and just reiterate what you mentioned. I think you summed it up perfectly, Carm, so I won't take much time on this, but I couldn't agree more with what you said about how this team, although the number might say they are an 8 seed, they're no longer an 8 seed anymore, right? It's kind of like a comparison I make is this. When you make a wager prior to an NFL game, but then going into the second half, when you're making a wager again, or you're betting live, the result, everything is completely different. The variables all change. The score changes. The line changes. Everything is different. Right? You can't, people say go into live betting with a game plan, but at the end of the day, you have no idea what's going to happen inside the game. Once that game starts, and the comparison I'm making right now is once the playoffs start, things change. And this Florida Panthers team has been very competitive, great goaltending. They've gone through incredibly deep teams. The team with the best season in the history of our game, they go ahead and beat the Maple Leafs, who have been, top 5 cup contenders, according to the bookmakers, for years now. And then you look at what they did against Carolina, who was the second best team in the league. So, I mean, it just has not been an easy pathway for them, but they've consistently found a way to get it done in those clutch moments. And I think that 100% that we could probably say that they're the number 1 team this playoffs in winning close games. And that's what you have to do. But I know there's going to be guys in our comment section saying, "Where's the love, Andrew? Where's the love for the Vegas Golden Knights?" And I'll tell you what, I've got a lot of good things to say about them because number one, they're deep. Number two, they don't take that many penalties. They're very good at being aggressive without going to the box. They're one of the most least penalized teams in the league, which in the Stanley Cup Finals, as everyone knows, staying out of the box is huge. And as much as everyone's talking about Bobrovsky, Adin Hill has definitely been a good goalie for them. It's amazing to see how they've gone through 4 or 5 goaltenders this season, and Adin Hill has showed up and played very well for them. They had to change goalies during the playoffs, and you haven't really noticed a difference. You haven't noticed really much at all. So this is going to be very tight. I will say this, Carm. When you look at this series, would you agree with me that higher scoring probably benefits Vegas and lower scoring benefits Florida? Would you agree with me on that?
Yeah, I would agree on you. I would agree with you on that one. I just don't know how the scoring is going to go throughout this series. We're just going to have to see how these teams. You take a. I think each series is obviously independent of itself. You can't. I can't take the line. They played great defensive hockey against Toronto and against Carolina. Just basically burying them into the ice and not giving them anything, because you have to also look at the Bruins series, and the Bruins series is a completely different series. They were forced to outscore the Bruins in high-scoring games. When I say outscoring, I'm talking about, they had to win games that were, 5-4, 4-3. We didn't see that in the Toronto series. There was 3-2 games. Same thing with the Carolina series as well too. So they've been able to adapt each and every series. So it's going to be interesting in this one. It's the same with the Vegas Golden Knights. Winnipeg tried to play a defensive game against Vegas. It didn't work. The Oilers tried to outscore them. It didn't work. Vegas has found ways to win each and every series as well. This is why I think this series is evenly matched, and you can break it down, like I said, where the Vegas forwards are probably better than Florida's. Their defense is probably better than Florida when you're looking at the lineups on paper and how they've played. But the Florida Panthers are playing like a team. These are two polar opposites, and just in the way they carry themselves on the ice. You look at Vegas wins the Western Conference. They take the picture. Nobody wants to touch the trophy. The Florida Panthers win the Eastern Conference Championship. They lift the trophy. Tkachuk says, "Hey, we earned this. We don't believe in the jinx. We're going to hold the trophy up." And then you watch them on the ice, and he is leading the team by example. This guy, they win the game in OT. What does he do? He gets his guys. They leave through the defensive circle, whatever, into the dressing room right away. They don't celebrate on the ice. They literally went to the dressing room right away. It was one of the funniest things. It's like open the gate, and boom, they score the game winner and they're off the ice. He has this team believing that they can win the cup. He did it in Boston. When they won Game 5, he said, "Guys, we're coming back here for Game 7." You heard him in the dressing room. They talked about it. They showed it. This is a guy who's a true leader in the dressing room, and he's a true leader on the ice. It's tough to find guys like that in the NHL nowadays.
It really is, Carm. He is what I think you'd call a playoff guy. I mean, he's exactly what you wanted to. And while you were saying that, I know we got to get to some picks, but I had to mention this. For everybody at home that just recently got into hockey or has been watching the show and betting on hockey all year, and you know these players, I want to read out what the draft was for the top couple picks in Matthew Tkachuk's draft year. Austin Matthews, Patrick Laine, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Jesse Puljujarvi, Olli Juolevi, and Matthew Tkachuk. Matthew Tkachuk goes 6th overall, Carm, and he's the first one out of all of these guys to reach a Stanley Cup final, and he's probably been the clutchest one in the playoffs out of all of them. So it just goes to show that you don't have to be a number 1 overall pick, number 2 overall pick, number 3. This guy's a number 6 overall pick in the 2016 draft, but he's certainly playing like a number 1 guy right now. And it's interesting. I just always find that stuff cool. I mean, we're many years away from when that draft took place, but he's the first guy to lead his team. Before we jump into the game tomorrow, we do have to do that. 2 plays I really like for the series. There's obviously Conn Smythe, all kinds of different ones, but Guys, you can bet at DraftKings right now over under 1.5 overtimes in this series. I like the over in this one, not one, but 2 overtimes. Both teams have been involved in a lot of overtime play during this playoffs. You can get that number at plus 145. I mean, what we saw the Florida Panthers play a game that went to 4 overtimes, 3 or 4 overtimes. They pretty much played 2 hockey games. In that series, there were also a couple other overtimes. When Vegas played against Edmonton, several of those games went to overtime. Last series against the Stars, we saw one, I believe. My point being at plus 145, that's a pretty good number. One more I like here. Will there be a shutout in this Stanley Cup final? Carm, plus 105 in this one. I like the under. At first, I was liking the over, but I realized that I think both teams have it in them to at least get on the board each game. Throughout some of these rounds in the playoffs, we have seen some of these teams get shut out and have a flat game. But looking at what both these teams are capable of, I know the goaltenders can steal a game, but I just don't like the number. I figured we'd get a way better price on the over, and that's why I was liking it at first. But looking at that plus 105, I don't like it very much. Give me the under on that one. Minus 125. There will not be a shutout here. But anything that you like as far as the series you wanted to mention, Conn Smythe winner, any fun props that you had in mind?
Yeah, I'm looking at some Conn Smythe ones. Listen, I was sold on the idea, and maybe I'm making a mistake by veering away from this, but I was sold on the idea that if the Florida Panthers win the Stanley Cup, that Sergei Bobrovsky wins the Conn Smythe, and he's plus 210. But after me pumping up Matthew Tkachuk as much as I have on this show so far, Andrew, he's plus 275, plus 290 to win the Conn Smythe. And he's got, 3 overtime winners, I think he scored, or 2 overtime winners, and then he scored that one with like 4 seconds left, I believe it was. He's been a big part of the playoffs for this team as a leader in the dressing room, a leader on the ice, and he's been big. So it wouldn't surprise me. Now, I don't know how books treat it if they're co-winners, like if they gave it to, if this is assuming Florida won, and they gave it to Bobrovsky and Matthew Tkachuk. I don't know if that's even ever happened before. And then on the other side of it, the Vegas Golden Knights win. They're going to give it to Eichel. I got to believe they're going to give it to Eichel. He's plus 425. I don't think it goes to Aiden Hill. And I don't know who else it could go to on that team. Like even, Mark Stone's been big, but he hasn't had the presence of any of the guys I've mentioned thus far. I think it goes to Eichel if he wins, and he's plus 425. So I may actually play those ones, toss a little bit of that pizza money on it and see how it shakes out. But the funny thing is that before we get to the game, and we're going to get to it shortly, before our producer gets on me, neither one of these teams is getting any respect for next year. The odds are already out. Florida Panthers are 14-1. Vegas Golden Knights are 16-1 to win next year's Stanley Cup. Same 3 teams are the favorites. Colorado Avalanche, the Boston Bruins, and the Toronto Maple Leafs, all 9-1 or under. I don't get it.
I don't get it either, but they're protecting themselves in some way. That's for sure. They know the money's going to come in on them. Carm, I would say that I could make an argument for Marchessault. He scored big goals as well, just like Tkachuk has for Florida. Marchessault is listed at 7-1, but I think Eichel would have to be Casper the Ghost, I think, this series for him to not win the Conn Smythe Trophy. Jumping into the game, Carm, let's get right into it. Game 1, you talked about rest versus rust. What big factor that really is. I know all the players have been asked about that by media members already for Florida. And I like how they've been kind of honest. They pretty much have said, hey, you know what? There might be a little bit of that, but it won't take us long to get into that game mode they've been so good at. Plus 110 for Florida. Vegas minus 130. Over 5.5 at minus 115. Under is minus 105. Puck line is plus 195 for the Vegas Golden Knights. Lots of props, sides, and totals to look at here, Carm. What sticks out to you?
The only one, Andrew, that when I look at it, that kind of stuck out to me is this. As you guys know, I talked about it for that Game 6 that was in Dallas. That the trend was other than that first game, the first period in the next 5 games of that series all went over the total of 1.5, and the line was very low. If you subscribe, or if you believe in the whole rust versus rust and rest, and Vegas comes into us with only a few days off, where Florida's been off a lot longer, then you might want to take that first period over. And I always tend to think the first games are not a feeling out process. Each team knows each other. They played during the regular season. It's not like they're meeting for the very first time. And I think that eventually the series settles into a tighter defensive type of series. I think we could very well see goals in the first game. The over 5.5 is something that I will likely play, but the first period over is something that I'm going to look at in this one, and we will see from the get-go. These teams are going to be pumped to be on the ice. I don't believe in Stanley Cup jitters. Forget about it. These teams are going out there. They're going to compete. Nothing has changed since Florida's last game against Carolina. Nothing has changed for Vegas as far as stepping on that ice after pounding Dallas in that final game, game 6-0. These teams are going on the ice. They're going to play. I just feel like the first game is one of those games where it's a little loose. You know what I mean? It's not pond hockey. It's not going to be pond hockey, but it's a little loose. And then these teams, they just find themselves and start playing a defensive game. With that said, I do like the first period over. So the juice on that is 120 on the first period over. And that's where I'm leaning at, minus 1.5, 120. And that's another play that I'll mention at the end of the show. But Andrew, do you subscribe to the idea that the first game's a little looser? You look at some series, and you saw it in the Vegas and Edmonton series. The game one was, did they even need goalies in that game? It was just, what was it? It was like 15-14 or 8-6 or whatever the score was. It was ridiculous playoff hockey that you almost never see, but it was the first game that series, and then and they settled down. At least one of the teams settled down. The other one just couldn't, just shot themselves in the foot. But what do you think? Are we seeing goals?
I think we'll see goals early in the game, then maybe it settled down a bit, which is why I'm with you on that first period total play. I do think that if we do see goals in game one, game number two, it probably will settle down. But we'll talk about that obviously on our next episode of Puck Time. But, there's just been so much talk about Bobrovsky and about Aiden Hill and how they've played. And I know, Carm, you did mention that they know each other. They have the film. They can watch all the stuff that they can. But one thing to mention, of course, these are East versus West. You know what I mean? Like, these teams really don't play a lot against each other during the season. You know what I mean? How many times this year during the regular season did Florida play a game at T-Mobile Arena? Not many times. I believe just one time. So when you look over the numbers there and you look at that, it is a little bit of a different scenario. And sometimes you can watch all the film you want, but if you don't know what each, player's tendencies are and how to defend, defense can be the toughest thing. You don't forget how to play offense, but if you don't know how to defend a certain player or certain things like that, that could also be an issue. And let's look at it this way. Bruce Cassidy, Paul Maurice. What do both those guys like to do? Protect their own end and play good defensive hockey. But they're also veteran coaches that learn from mistakes and know how to make adjustments. That is the big thing people don't realize about coaching. Coaching doesn't always happen during the game. It happens between the games. So I really like your point there. I think that could be something we see these teams make a couple of defensive mishaps, make some mistakes, and then game two, before even knowing what happens, I'm already probably thinking of taking the under in the second game, if that makes some sense there for you. Vegas is known for getting off to really fast starts in the first period. I think it's very important. This team has been doing it since the team started. They always have fast first periods. They go out there and put on a show for their fans right away. But I'll tell you what, it would not shock me for the underdog to take game one. It really wouldn't. And I'll be honest, I was hoping to get a better price on Florida in this game. Obviously, we're just getting the plus 110 here. But when I look at this game, I think that Florida could catch Vegas off guard with their style of play. So I'm not eager and running to the window to take Vegas right now in this game.
Yeah. And Andrew, I get it. You make good points there. This is a series where, and you look at the game one price. The game one price essentially is, other than home ice, probably worth like they're 20 cents. It's baked into the price. It's a coin flip. They know it's a coin flip, but Vegas has home ice, last change. But again, it's a Florida team that lost game one to Boston 3-1. It's not like as if they were blown out, but have won 8 straight games. And we're talking about, winning 3 games in Boston, winning 2 in Toronto, and then winning 2 in Carolina. And those are teams that during the regular season did not lose a lot of games at home. This team has been playing well. So can they go into Vegas and win? Yeah, of course. We'll see how game one eventually unfolds. But the one thing about these teams, and this is when you're looking at, and to your point of looking at like some unders as this series goes on, I completely agree with you, because the thing that the Vegas Golden Knights have been good at since the Edmonton late in the Edmonton series is, and Florida has been throughout the playoffs, is being disciplined, not taking penalties or not a lot of penalties, and not putting the other team on the power play. Vegas knew, if we take penalties against the Edmonton Oilers, that vaunted power play is going to destroy us, and it did for a while. And then Vegas just did not take penalties against Edmonton, and Edmonton couldn't beat them 5-on-5. Same thing with Florida. Florida didn't take a lot of penalties against the Leafs. They didn't take a lot of penalties versus Carolina, and 5-on-5, they were the better team. So if these teams play 5-on-5 with very few power plays, I don't see where the goals come from. It could happen, but I just don't see where the goals come from as this series progresses, the game, game 2 onwards. We'll see what happens in game one. I'm still subscribing to the fact, and there's no data for me to back this up with, but I just think game 1 is going to be just a little looser. It could be a 4-2 game, goes over the total. I'd be happy with 1-1 at the end of the first and cash that first period over, Andrew.
I'd be happy with that as well. And like I mentioned, we'll get the Puck Time Twitter account going, Carm, but we still have the charity challenge running. We are ready to lock in some bets throughout this series. We're hoping it's a long one. We're hoping to cash some tickets in the process of that. And I'll start things off with what I like here for mine, Carm, and it's going to be Adin Hill under 29.5 saves. We've talked a lot about props for goalies, but most of the time we talk about these goalie props, we're talking about overs. And I think that Adin Hill hasn't seen the Florida Panthers quite often in his career. And this Vegas Golden Knights defense hasn't seen this Panthers team quite a bit. And a lot of times, I think the game ones, the underdogs are very live. There's no bounce back effect. They're not used to seeing what they bring to the table. And Kachuk keeps on saying it, and they're running with this right now. They're playing with house money. There's a reason why the Florida Panthers lifted that trophy, the Eastern Conference Final trophy, because they weren't even expected to be there at all. Vegas was the number 1 seed. I do think that Vegas has strong defense, and unfortunately for Florida, they will be spending lots of time in their own end. So I don't think that Adin Hill will be asked to make all kinds of saves, but when Florida gets a good chance, usually they capitalize on it. So I'll take under 29.5 saves for tomorrow night, Saturday, game 1, Stanley Cup Finals. And of course, we'll have some plays tweeted out as well from the Puck Time Twitter account. What do you have for us, Carm, for your charity challenge wager tonight for tomorrow?
Yeah, so and our charity challenge sits at we have just over a 50% increase in the charity challenge starting amount. So Andrew, let's not blow it over these next 4 to 7 games. So we have some we can divvy that up between 4 different charities, and I have a couple in mind already that people have mentioned. That are near and dear to them, and then we'll figure out a couple other ones. But and then one other thing before I do the charity challenge one, Effin Bob, that's not a swear word, but that's his name in our chat, asks a question to Andrew, which is, do multiple periods of overtime count for that over 2.5 overtimes? No, it doesn't. One game, no matter how many overtimes it is only one game in OT. So you would need 2 games going to OT in order to hit over 1.5, if that's the number that Andrew quoted. My charity challenge play is going to be Alexander Barkov, shots on goal over 2.5. You only have to lay 110 in juice. Last couple of games of that Toronto series, and then the first couple of games of the Carolina series, he was firing pucks on net. It was something that he wasn't doing in the earlier on, and he went over his number. Then an injury. He only played about 3 minutes in Game 3 of the Carolina series. Came back, still got some ice time, but not as much as he normally did. Had a couple shots on goal. He's now back at full strength. He's had time off. I expect him to continue to fire pucks at the net and be a big factor in this series. They need him scoring. They need him doing well here. And over 2.5 minus 110. I love this price, and that's my charity challenge play.
I love it, and it is a great price on that one for a guy that is an all-star, is a great player, and he will have to be big for his team in the Stanley Cup Finals. Guys, with just a short time remaining in the Stanley Cup and the NHL season, we do recommend grabbing week-long packages, month-long packages, and of course, there's lots of sports going on right now. Still, I'm looking forward to CFL season starting, which Carm and I will have our show launching next Wednesday. We've got lots of soccer action throughout the next few weeks, including the rest of the summer as well. So much going on, UFC as well, and of course, we all know baseball is always there for us. So if you want to find our picks, grab them over at WagerTalk.com. All of our best bets are there. So every day on Puck Time, we're giving out picks. And sometimes the picks I talk about make the client card. Sometimes they do not. But you can go to WagerTalk and get all of our best bets there. And speaking of best bets, Carm, we have the same one for the show for today. And you know what? If it was during the regular season, after I saw what you put in, I would have put a new one in. But why would I? I like the pick you selected, and I wanted to roll with that one too. So you can speak on both of our behalves, Carm. What do you have?
No, and Andrew, I honestly, and I get what you're saying, and I respect you for it. We're not going to throw out a play just for the sake of throwing out a play and then not have our money on it. It's pretty stupid. If we don't bet it, you shouldn't get it. That's the way I look at it. But as far as and I'll get to it in a second. As far as what's up at WagerTalk for me today, 3 soccer games today, all going at or 3 plays in soccer, all going at 2:30 today. A 5% play loaded for Sunday in the final weekend of Italy's Serie A domestic season. Soccer seasons are coming to an end, but there is plenty of soccer with the Leagues Cup, which is a World Cup format here in North America between all the MLS teams and all the Mexican teams, club teams, and of course the Women's World Cup. Last year, or the last World Cup, 66 units gained, I believe it was, in the World Cup. It doesn't matter where you make the money as long as you make it. Now, so pick up the 3-day all access and get everything, including tomorrow's plays as well, too. There'll be a bunch of them. The show best bet, guys, we're going to go to that first period, and the first period over. You're laying 120 juice on over 1.5, and I just hope I am correct in the fact that it is a little, I hate to use the phrase loosey-goosey, but that's where we are, and that we see some goals in the first period of this game. I think game 1 is not going to mimic what we see in games 2, 3, 4 onwards. I think this one might be one of the higher scoring games. At least I hope so. So with that said, over 1.5 minus 120 is the show best bet for myself and Andrew. And finally, guys, before I throw it to Andrew, absolutely, man. You guys have been with us all season long in the chat, through the good, through the bad. We absolutely love you guys for tuning in each and every day, and even the comments for people who catch the video later on WagerTalk TV's channel. Thanks for doing it, guys. We really appreciate it.
And you guys can tell we enjoy what we're doing here. We love doing the show, and although we've been live for about 35 minutes here, I feel like we've talked about a lot of different stuff, a lot of serious wagers, stuff for game 1, and just different things to look at. So, guys, enjoy the game tomorrow. We've got 4 bets given here, or 3, excuse me. Both of us like the first period over in game number one. I like Aiden Hill under 29.5 saves, and Carmine has Barkov over 2.5 shots on goal at a great price there. Guys, Wager Talk today coming up at 12 o'clock Eastern time. All kinds of great shows and content coming up here on the Wager Talk TV channel. Follow us both on Twitter and check us out at wagertalk.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on Monday.
Welcome to the new Top 3-day $30 special. The front page leaderboard at WagerTalk has become the go-to first stop spot. While being at the top of the 3 and or 7-day rankings is an honor, being on top of the leaderboard over the last 30 days is a symbol of greatness. And we want to share that greatness with you. So for the first 3 days of every month, the top 3 leaders in profit, winning percentage, and return of income will have a 7-day all-access pass available at a 30-day savings. Regularly priced at $99, you can grab 7 days with any or all 3 leaders for just $69 each. So on the first of every month, head to Deals tab on the top of WagerTalk.com to find out which of our red hot handicappers will have their 7-day all access packages available for under $10 per day.